Right. So thanks everyone for joining on a Wednesday evening, at least in Toronto, Canada time. So for tonight's session, this has been a quite a popular request, not just from our students, which I've actually provided a separate session with folks from the WeCloud DevOps program. It was a very similar session in terms of teaching them how to prepare the resume and build out their portfolio. One difference is due to the time constraints in this info session. The session I had with the WeCloud Data DevOps program students, we did a lot of hands-on and demo in terms of building out the resume, as well as I showed them how to build their personal portfolio webpage and GitHub repo page as well. I'll talk a little. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but there's not going to be any hands-on demo for this session. It's just talking about those types of components that would help um, give your resume and your portfolio a higher profile and visibility when it comes to hiring managers and recruiters. So that's the purpose of um, tonight's session. Okay. So a little bit about me. I'm a DevOps program manager at WeCloudData, in addition to a few other roles I play here as well at WeCloud and our consulting arm Beam Data. I primarily, in my role as the DevOps program manager, I do a lot of the tech training and career support for our students and alumni in the DevOps program. I oversee the student experience, so that's actually a very big part of my role here is to ensure that the student experience is top notch. Because quite frankly, for WeCloud, our students are the customers. So customer experience and ensuring that the customer journey is the best that we can provide is always top of mind for me. And getting feedback from folks like yourself, Ashley, in the info sessions lets me understand how we can improve our events better for people who are interested in DevOps as well. So I work with the faculty and staff to build and deliver hopefully the best DevOps program and experience that's available. Um, these two links you can reach out to me either through LinkedIn, or you can email me directly as well if there's any questions, or if you just want to connect, feel free to do that. Okay. So in terms of the agenda for tonight's session, it's quite packed for our 1 hour session, but really there is a flow and a story to this. First part, just get all the housekeeping out of the way, make a few announcements, and just explain a little bit about WeCloudData for those folks and those folks who will be watching this recording later on YouTube, if they don't already know WeCloud. The second part is where we kind of build up the context around the resumes. Like, why would we even care about building up a DevOps resume? Well, it's to meet the demand in the DevOps job market. We'll talk about some of the demands, the salaries, and the profile. And just bear in mind, there's a caveat to this in that these data points were taken before the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, and I think we're all still reeling and trying to sort out all the things that are going to be the ripples and after effects of the whole Silicon Valley Bank situation. So I'm looking forward to reading the reports once the dust settles and everyone has more of a clear mind and clear view and optics of what's going on. But at this point in time, quite frankly, I think it's too soon to rush into any conclusions. So anything you read or make assumptions about, it might be corrected, or it might change very, very quickly just because of the flux and the how close we are to the situation at hand. So it's probably better to wait for a few months until more reports and data points are gathered before we can make any conclusions about the forecast of the job market in general, but also in tech IT and DevOps for the next couple of months. So for now, in terms of the job market I'm presenting, it's based on data points before the whole Silicon Valley Bank situation. But it's something to keep in mind. We have to still be relevant and be cognizant of the world situation and things like that. The meat of the session, and I think what you folks are primarily interested in, is the DevOps resume part. Oh, sorry, here for some reason it says part two. It's supposed to be part three, of course. Here is where I really want to start setting up the understanding of the job hunt cycle. I think probably you folks are already in a mature stage in your professional career, just as I am. Unless one of you folks are coming straight out of school or something, or maybe the folks who are going to be watching later are just out of school. But typically, generally speaking, I think for the vast majority of us, we've probably gone through at least a few rounds of this job hunt cycle. So it's probably not going to be anything new to you. But I want to talk about it from the angle or the lens of DevOps engineering. And just recently, I helped mentor two of our students from the DevOps program who are actively looking for DevOps jobs. They got DevOps engineering job offers, which they accepted, and they're now working as DevOps engineers. So we'll talk about some of the resume structure and sort of why I think they were chosen among many candidates in terms of the resume, but also afterwards as well. One of the most important parts of this whole job hunt lifecycle, though, which I think probably all of you will agree with me, is it's not just about the resume. Obviously, the resume is a key component in it, but something that, frankly, my personal opinion of this is it's even more important than the resume is the networking part of this. But of course, the resume is something you just have to have. It's a must-have first. Even if you do networking and you get referred, the HR is going to ask you for a resume. So no matter what, you have to build that resume first, get that out of the way. But I truly believe that most of your time should actually be spent networking. That's really the secret sauce. So in terms of some quick housekeeping things, I got to mention that Manic Publications is one of our partners and sponsors. They have a great library of publications, and I've checked out their books. I purchased some of their books as well. It's just a fantastic catalog of tech and IT publications. You can go there if you want to use a discount. We through our partnership, you can use this discount code WeCloudData 39, and I think anything in your shopping cart when you check out, if you use this code, you do get 39% off the final price. Our DevOps program, obviously, this is a DevOps info session, so I'm going to make this announcement as well. The next cohort starts June 22nd, 2023. Reach out to myself or just go and check out our webpage if you're interested, and hopefully you find some useful information there as well. This info session is not about the DevOps program, but we do have other info sessions that will be coming up in the future that will discuss the content and delivery of the DevOps program. This event is also part of a series of events, actually. Cloud and DevOps engineering talk we had beginning of March. We also had a discussion about IT to DevOps, although really DevOps is part of IT, but the title is a bit misleading. Really, it's about folks coming from IT who want to specialize more in DevOps and get more towards that software development and operations sort of lifecycle within a business's value stream. So tonight's session is on the DevOps resume. We do have an upcoming session on Friday on Introduction to Docker. It's a 1-hour session. We're not going to dive, deep into Docker. It's really for folks to get a taste of what DevOps is all about and see some hands-on practical demos as well. On the 19th, we're also going to have an info session on Kubernetes certifications guide. It's kind of relevant and related to what we're talking about today because certifications is also something great to put on your resume. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the resume section. There are different schools of thought about this. There are some folks who just hate certifications and don't think they add any value. There are folks who believe it actually does add a lot of value. I'm part of the camp that thinks, hey, if it doesn't hurt to have it, you know what I mean? Like, it can't be a negative thing. The only thing though is that it does take some time to prepare, and it's going to cost you a pretty penny. So, I mean, that if there's a con or whatever, or there's an impact on your wallet, it's there. But I mean, if you have a certification, you can plop it on your resume. Why not, right? It's not going to hurt you. And then, sort of like I was saying, we're going to have another cycle where we talk about the DevOps program. So, end of this month, we'll have another session on DevOps and the DevOps program as well. Okay. Excuse me. If you're interested in finding out more about events and all the programs we have and what we offer, feel free to join our Discord channel. If you have a QR code scanner thing, you can scan it here and it should take you straight to our Discord channel. All right. All right. So very quickly, I don't want to take up too much time on all this housekeeping stuff. So let's just blitz through this. So WeCloudData is an accredited college in Ontario. We're located in downtown Toronto. We provide everything from teaching, that's our academic arm, WeCloudData. We do corporate training as well as part of WeCloudData's teaching services. We have WeCareer, which is another arm of the WeCloud umbrella, which provides mentorship in terms of career services. So things like resume preparation, like what I'm talking about today, interview prep. We help students and graduates prepare for their interviews. We also do consulting and we implement technology solutions for our clients through Being Data. So there is a student journey process which our students go through to eventually complete the programs that we offer. So there's a screening process just to understand students better. There's the intensive boot camp or program itself, the course that is going to provide that knowledge. There's business projects that allow you to potentially work on projects with clients and partners. I'll show you some of our partners and clients in a bit. And hopefully through our WeCareer services, it helps you land the job that you're looking for as well. Okay. Some stats as well there. So what is this? Oh, okay. So these are just some reviews and things. Yeah, all of this stuff is available as well on the WeCloud website. So feel free to head over there when you get the chance to see some of this info as well. These are just some of the partners and clients we either are actively working with right now or have worked with in the past. And our students and alumni have either worked on projects with companies that you see here, or they have been hired by these companies and are actively working there. I think some great success stories for WeCloud at least. I've been with them for 2 years now, but there are folks who were their students, say 5 years ago, who are now directors of IT or directors of data science groups and teams in some of these companies like Royal Bank. I know there's a director of machine learning who used to be a WeCloud student in the past as well. Okay. So let's talk about the DevOps job market to sort of build up the context and I guess the desire for even creating a DevOps resume in the first place. Before we get there, though, this has got to be one of my favorite quotes in some time. Anyone who's joined my info sessions in the past is probably sick and tired of seeing this. I show this in every single info session that I'm a part of, but it's just really neat. And I think it's such an interesting quote coming from the president of a traditional car manufacturing company. Our competitors no longer just make cars. Companies like Google, Apple, and even Facebook are what I think about at night. So this was Akio Toyota's response to I think a reporter who was just trying to figure out like what Toyota's been up to, what they're kind of think about in the future and things like that. So I think that reporter was expecting names like Nissan or Ford, in terms of their competitors and trying to keep up with them. But Akio responds with names like Google, Apple, and Facebook. Those aren't names that you would associate with car manufacturing companies. But the point here is that they're thinking towards the future in the sense that we're living in a digital world, so it doesn't matter what business um, industry your company is in. You're going to have to deal with code somehow, software, application development, all the stuff that makes the digital world tick. And I think we see that creeping into our lives every single day. I mean, all of us have probably encountered, AI voice services like Siri, Alexa, and Chat GPT. I mean, talk about a tech, you know, uh, tech solution creating a storm in the lives of people who normally wouldn't be talking about tech and IT and digital products like that. So we live in a digital world, and it's not going to stop. It's going to continue to, accelerate at an unprecedented pace. And uh, those words get used, thrown around quite a lot. But I think what we've seen with ChatGPT, it's ushering in. This is one of those pivotal moments where we can really say, you know what, there was a point in time before ChatGPT, and there's a time after ChatGPT. I think we've reached that threshold. Just like how in the 1970s, one could argue that there was a world before C programming language or the C language and Unix, and there was a world after, which ushered in Linux and things like that. So we're uh, we have to start bracing for a very different world if we haven't already felt the ripple effects yet. In terms of DevOps outlook, looks pretty good. So this was again, like I mentioned, these are not numbers after the Silicon Valley bank situation. These are before that. But once the dust settles, I'll have to update these numbers to see what's going on with that. But from Glassdoor in Q1 2022, so about 8 months ago or whatever. Base salaries in the average base salary in Canada is around 87 grand. Base salary in the US is 105 grand. This is actually pretty accurate based on numbers from the folks I was mentoring who got job offers. The numbers are roughly hovering around this, more or less. Of course, depending on your experience, the industry, the sector, how big the organization is, if they're part of the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, these numbers are going to have a bit of a range. But, you know, average, median, these are sort of numbers you should expect when it comes to salaries for DevOps. And this is just another look, but in Q4 2022. So a few months back. So it's 94 grand on the average base pay in Canada. Um, and in the US is about 110 grand for DevOps salaries. Now that trans, I guess, okay, that's quite well. That just means the Canadian dollar is not that strong. So in Canadian, it's 150 grand. Wow. Okay. So yeah, those are the numbers that Glassdoor is giving us. Um, Now, if just it's good to look at different sources as well. If you look at Zippia, for example, roughly kind of showing similar things in August of 2022, so a couple months ago, average hovering around six figures, the 100K. Now, if you break it down by region, kind of differs, but again, it's probably accounting for real estate, cost of living in those specific regions as well. But relatively speaking, fairly high across the US in different locations like uh, tech hotspots like Atlanta, New York, and San Francisco. Okay. And these are just Zippy has a nice summary overview of the DevOps engineer profile and also some of the properties as well. So again, average salary roughly six figures, growth rate, a very healthy growth rate, 21% year over year. Average age, interestingly, this is kind of, I'd say mid to sort of on the older range. And that's probably because again, DevOps engineer, the term and the title itself is becoming uh, more mainstream these days. But in the past, even if they were doing DevOps engineering stuff, that might not have been the title. And so these folks might have been bringing all their experience as they apply for DevOps engineers positions now, and then they're part of the surveys that are being collected. Um, Bachelor's degree, computer science. Gender ratio is, I don't know if this is reflective of just DevOps alone or IT. Maybe IT is like this as well. So unfortunately, there's still quite a bit of a gender gap there. Hopefully, that's going to improve over time. Um, in terms of top skills, Python, Docker, infrastructure looks about right. We'll take a look at the skills later on as well when I go over some of the things you want to have on your resume for DevOps, which are table stakes. We'll go over that in a bit as well. This is just to set up the context for the resume stuff. DevOps job market salaries. This also coming from Glassdoor, but I guess this showing the trend over time. Interestingly, there was quite a bit of a dip between 2017 and 2018, but not by a lot. $5,000 in terms of average, or sorry, median base salaries, and then slowly over time it's coming back up, and then in 2022 it's at 120,000 as the median base salary for a DevOps engineer, coming from Glassdoor. From Robert Half Talent Solutions, they're also a HR talent consultancy research firm that looks into a lot of these job market numbers as well. DevOps engineer ranks in terms of salary, average salary, ranks part of the top 10, and here it's part of the top 5 in terms of average salaries. Uh, in the reports, it also has numbers showing that DevOps engineer, in terms of the title that people typically want to have, and in terms of I guess job expectations and things like that, it's also part of the top 10 in general for tech and IT. In Canada, if we look at the spread in terms of salaries across different regions, not really of a surprise for 2022 in terms of the provinces. Ontario typically, I mean, Toronto has a lot of the job opportunities and there's a lot of just jobs in general in Toronto, Ontario. So you have quite a bit of a competitive market there, trying to attract talent. So they're going to have to up the offers in terms of salaries to grab the talent they want. So it's a bit more competitive in Ontario from an employer perspective. Alberta, British Columbia, Quebec, though, fairly similar in terms of salaries for DevOps engineers in Canada. Yeah. Now, when we talk about the skills, it can look like quite a bit of a spaghetti soup, spaghetti bowl here. This is a busy slide. The all I'm trying to show here is that there's a lot of things that in general DevOps engineers are expected to know. You don't have to be an expert in it's impossible. There's probably more than 150 tools that you could be learning as a DevOps engineer. But no one, no matter how senior you are going to be able to master and be an expert in every single tool, and tools change all the time. Like today Docker's popular. Who knows? Tomorrow's going to be Podman, and then after Podman, who knows what it is? What you should focus more on is systems and principles and processes, because those sort of are more stable and they stay along for longer periods of time and epochs and eras. So even though tools change in popularity because of how the market forces work and how vendors push for those things. But uh, fundamentals, like networking fundamentals, load balancing, software architecture, those types of systems and principles remain over the decades, not just years. So focus more on those things like conceptual understanding of how these DevOps pipelines work. And as we'll talk about, it's not just about the tools. Actually, DevOps in terms of tech and IT, one of the most important things is communication and collaboration. The ability to, I mean, its namesake is coming from software development, IT operations, and a blend of those two. So even in the name itself, it's about integrating different teams and moving towards a common goal, regardless of what team you're exactly. So don't focus on specifically just the tools and stuff, but think about systems, principles, and domains of knowledge. There's a lot, but I'll show you later on when we talk about the resume that there are some table stakes domains that you absolutely should focus on if you want to give yourself a better chance. And I've talked to so I have friends who are very senior infrastructure engineers in well, I guess in this case it's like Fortune 10 or Fortune 15. One of the companies that one of my friends works at is brings annually $200 billion in revenue. It's like a healthcare part of the healthcare industry. They bring more than $200 billion of revenue every year, and I got a chance to talk to them and get some insights about their DevOps practices and things like that. So I'll talk a little bit about that later when it comes to the resume and sort of what they're looking for in candidates and stuff like that. Okay. But yeah, so there's a lot of things here, networking, Linux, you got infrastructure as code, and I'll mention some of these key ones later as well. Again, skills, you're going to see things like containers, Docker, Kubernetes, CI/CD, Jenkins, infrastructure as code, Ansible, Terraform. I'll show you how that looks like on the resume and sort of how to focus your how you prep your resume to focus on those table stakes. Cloud, definitely these three are the kings. AWS is still takes the lion's share of the market, but Azure's not too far behind. GCP can be niche sometimes, but usually these two are competing for most of the customers and enterprise customers. But these three are the big providers when it comes to cloud. And okay, but this 2021. So I think especially with ChatGPT and stuff, who knows? Azure might have caught up quite a bit already. And just to show that you really just have to focus on one of the clouds. You don't have to know all three. And this shows that there's not much of disparity between the different types of cloud. Really, what is important when it comes to your salary and salary expectations should be the number of years that you've worked in any cloud environment. So it doesn't matter whether you're using AWS, GCP, or Azure. It's more important about how many years have you worked in any of those cloud environments. And you could be switching, between different ones over the years. It doesn't matter. They're all cloud. But as you can see, the difference happens once you go through your years of experience using public cloud providers like AWS, GCP, or Azure. Excuse me. DevOps engineer skills. If we want to get more granular, these are some of the heavy hitters. Python, naturally, it's sort of a general programming language that you can use for scripting. Sysadmin works well in the DevOps environment. Ansible is written in Python as well. Docker, anything infrastructure automation related, Jenkins, source code version control, GitHub. Linux, this is heavy. This is really important. Ansible configuration management, cloud, container stuff with Kubernetes, Docker Kubernetes, CI/CD, again, related to Jenkins, and Java. Enterprises typically are still very much embedded. Their systems are embedded with Java code. So Java is not a bad idea to learn Java as well as you go job hunting in the DevOps world. Typically, those folks who are DevOps engineers today do have backgrounds in, your usual suspects when it comes to IT and tech diplomas and degrees. Computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, IT. These are not too surprising. The folks who sort of transition and specialize more in DevOps engineering, sorry, in their careers as DevOps engineer became a term and a job title, are usually coming from build, release, Linux. And again, I mean, not too surprising because even before there was the word DevOps engineering, these tools and these systems that were in place are the bedrocks of what we have as DevOps today. So these systems and tools, release, build, release, these types of processes went on to create the pillars for DevOps. So if you're already working as a build, release engineer, Linux admin, you already know all of the stuff that's now going into job ads for a title like DevOps engineer. Okay, so not surprising that these folks would eventually become DevOps engineer in their job titles. This is another view of some common DevOps roles and their salaries. So platform engineering is a very hot, I guess, role or title that's cropping up these days. Release manager, automation architect, software developer, quality assurance professional, security. So what this should tell you is that DevOps is an umbrella term that encompasses many, many different skill sets, and some of these skill sets involve, these processes like infrastructure and platforms, PAS, like OpenShift as an example is a platform as a service. Release, CI/CD, automation, things like infrastructure and software automation. A lot of software development and application development skills and processes involved in DevOps. QA, of course, you can't do DevOps if you have low quality code and low quality applications. Security, another big pillar within DevOps. Now they sort of demarcate it as DevSecOps, but really security should be everyone's concern at all times. All right, so that kind of is building up the context and sort of, I guess, reasons why you should be interested in DevOps and sort of a DevOps career. And but obviously, to get towards that career, in addition to training and stuff, you're going to have to eventually start putting up a resume. So let's talk about the resume now for the rest of this session. Okay. Now, um, I think maybe some of us have gone through this phase at some point in our professional careers or our job hunting. It can be very frustrating. You go through, I'm sure many of us have gone through so many years of education. And then when you're fresh out of school, it's not as easy as, it was painted to be. I think early on when we um, maybe applied for college or entered school, we thought it would just be, just finish 4 years and then apply for jobs and you'll get 100, apply for 10 jobs, you get 100 offers. Um, the reality is it's not that simple. Of course, we all know this. There's a process to this. There's a professionalism to this. There's a lot of things have to be in place, and there's a lot of factors that uh, are important to actually start having a job or start getting the job. But it's not just about a job. I think the way you want to think about this, sort of like the way you want to think about principles and systems and processes, is it's it's about the career. A job is just it's just like a stepping stone, or it's just one part of the larger journey. But really, the career, you have to look at your career holistically, and you have to look at it as a journey. Like where do these jobs fit in the bigger picture? Eventually, like in your mind, you should be thinking, 10, 15 years from now, are you trying to become a CTO? Are you trying to become a CEO? Are you trying to become an entrepreneur? Then you have to start working towards that goal by, starting to work in certain jobs or starting to work in certain industries or starting to have a certain network and having a certain profile on your resume and things like that. So you always have to have a vision of where you want to be in the future so that the actions you take now work towards that goal. I think it's obvious and it's easier said than done. Like we probably all know this. It's just it's difficult, it's not something that happens easy. But we all know that we really should be thinking about our career holistically. Resumes, interviews, jobs, those are just, little parts of the bigger picture, but still important parts because, if you're going to have a career, you got to have a job, jobs, and if you're gonna have jobs, you gotta have resumes, and you gotta have interviews, and you gotta build your network. So it's just the whole part of the cycle. Okay. Um, but really, I mean, if you think about it, there's two sides to this. Clearly, in any job hunting cycle, there's the employer perspective and there's the candidate perspective. And sometimes you'll probably in your career, you'll be on um, either side of the fence or either sitting in either chair. And sometimes, who knows, maybe you're doing both at the same time. But so for employers, they're looking for someone to fill a need because, and we'll see, every organization, every business has um, goals, business objectives, which lead to business initiatives, which lead to business projects. And business projects require resources. They have deadlines, they have resources, um, and they're constrained by a lot of things. But one of the things they absolutely need are headcounts to get those projects done. So they got to fill a need. Uh, the candidate or the job seeker obviously is looking from their perspective. It's not just about the organization of the business. They're looking for from their perspective um, hygiene. Yes, there will. This is being recorded, so yes, we will also provide a recording for this once it's done. Thanks for asking. From the candidate's perspective, think about it. If you're the candidate, you have to think about your career. You have to think about your salary. You have to think about your benefits, and especially as you get into your midterm of your career, and then especially later on in your career, you probably have families, you have children. You gotta think about all these things and how you're gonna support your family as well. So, here they're thinking about how to fill a DevOps engineering role for their day-to-day operations, but really probably those day-to-day operations are trying to support the project. This candidate is trying to find a new job for whatever reason. Will go through some of those reasons why people look for jobs. I think some are more obvious than others, and specifically want to have a role in CI/CD where they can apply their CI/CD and DevOps skills for businesses looking for those things. So in a way, I mean, on the surface, this looks like a match. I mean, two people trying to accomplish very common objectives in terms of the needs and what the capabilities the candidate can provide. So this is a match. If we break down the employer perspective again, I don't want to bore you with these types of notes here, but if we think about the company vision and mission, it's the company's mandate and responsibilities to stakeholders. Usually, companies, enterprises, organizations, every single business has stakeholders, customers, shareholders, etc. So what they have to do is they have to, through their vision and mission, unify every single business initiative, project, and work towards that common roadmap. If they're not doing that, they're being inefficient. It's gonna create waste. Um, the business value is about aligning the processes and everything together in the business so that it's delivering value through their products and services to their end customers. That's what generates profit. That's what generates money. But resources are, of course, required to do all of that. And the other thing they have to consider when they're looking for candidates to help them fulfill these pillars of business value and their company and business goals and objectives is they have to take into consideration market forces. What are the market needs? What are the market trends? But importantly, also, how do they future-proof themselves? You know, again, I don't know how much you folks have been following ChatGPT, but I can guarantee you that business executives, business leaders, and business stakeholders looked at the storm that ChatGPT is creating and thinking, "Wow, are we going to be future proof? Is this business going to be future proof with the implications of ChatGPT?" So these market forces come and go, and they got to be ready, and that influences their hiring cycles as well. So maybe they're like, okay, well, if ChatGPT is here, we got to play the ChatGPT game. Then we need FTEs or resources who know how to play with ChatGPT. Okay, so that might cause them to enter a hiring cycle that maybe in the past they didn't have or something. But there's typical hiring cycles, and sometimes it's ad hoc. But regardless, these three pillars usually, or these three components, usually affect employers trying to look for candidates to fulfill roles. From the candidate's perspective, they're actually probably going through job cycles all the time. So think about where you're at right now. You're at your current job. It could be stagnant. You don't feel like there's a lot of room for growth. There could be economic forces like the whole Silicon Valley bank collapse and all that stuff. Maybe your company's downsizing. There's a lot of, and I mean, these reasons are quite negative, but there's also positive reasons. Maybe you just happen to bump into a really great opportunity which aligns with your career goals and objectives, like we were talking about, your holistic, bigger roadmap. And maybe that's why you're gonna go from one phase or stage of your job cycle and then jump into the next one, which is the active job search cycle, or I mean phase. This is when you're scanning the job market, Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, trying to understand sort of, what's going on. What's the job market like right now? What are the skill sets that are being actively pursued by hiring managers and recruiters? You're going to start tapping to your networks. Maybe your friends, your professional colleagues. Try to understand, what opportunities are there. You're going to start preparing your resumes, start preparing for interviews, sort of there's going to be that phase where you're just refreshing and updating your resume, and then you're going to get to a stage where you're just pumping out resumes or applying to jobs like crazy with the resumes that you prepare. Okay? Once you've completed this phase, you're then going to jump into the transition phase. This is where, either through your active job search phase, you're kind of like, okay, all the jobs that I'm kind of gunning for, it seems like it's changed since the last time, I did a job hunt, and now everyone's talking about containers and Kubernetes, and maybe you don't have those skill sets, and you're like, you know what, this transition phase I'm in, it makes more sense for me to go back to school or upskill or whatever it is, get a short certificate, go on Udemy, who knows. But maybe in the transition phase, it's not about jumping into a new job right away. It's maybe you got to upskill first and prepare yourself for the new era or the new jobs that are now part of the market. Or this transition phase is like, you know what, you did your active job search, you got responses back, you went through the interviews, you got offers, and now it's just you're just negotiating, and you accept your job offers, and then you're off to the races, and you're now just taking on a new job and integrating and transitioning into that new role. But then that becomes your current job, and then the cycle starts again. The way to look at it is you really should always be ready for the next job. So the moment you take on a new job, really, you should be thinking about, okay, what's the next step for my career? What's the am I gonna go up in seniority in my current role, or do I want to sort of hop around in the job market, but in the same industry, or do I want to switch industries? So um, you always want to be thinking a few steps ahead. It's that's just part of the modern job life cycle, I guess. And we'll talk a little bit about leverage later on, but that's when you're constantly have this view of your career and your job life cycle. That kind of helps you have leverage because you're always you might not be actively searching, but you always have a few recruiters on hand where kind of having those conversations, getting a feel for what your value might be in the job market. And you don't want to be scrambling, let's say all of a sudden your company's furloughing or downsizing like crazy, and then you're part of that storm. You don't want to be scrambling in that position because you don't have leverage, but the recruiters and hiring managers and the other folks have leverage. So there's a balance. It's almost like a tug and pull. So, but if you're always in this mindset where you always got to think about your career and make sure your resume is updated and refreshed and stuff like that, then you have a little bit more leverage. Okay, so just have this view in mind that it's almost like an endless cycle, but you just got to be ready and got to be ready for your next role and the next step in your career. Don't it sounds weird, but don't settle, right? Because once you settle, then things really just become stagnant, and your skills are going to become stagnant as well. So you always want to think about how you can keep improving yourself. It's just a constant improvement. In terms of the platforms and job boards, probably not a surprise to you folks. These are probably arguably some of the most popular ones when job seekers are in the active job search cycle. LinkedIn, social media platform for professionals, of course. Obviously, don't treat it like Facebook or Instagram. Recruiters and hiring managers are here scouring professionals to fill positions they're looking for. Keep in mind, recruiters and hiring managers, they have an incentive as well. It's not just you looking for a job. These folks get paid to look for the right talent to fill the positions. And I've never been like an HR recruiter before, but I know from doing these job hunts myself, for example, recruiters, if they successfully place someone in the position that the company was looking for, and that person gets hired and stays on for X number of months, they might get a bonus or something like that. So it can't just be like, they get hired and then they leave in a month or something. There's probably like some sort of time threshold, like 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year or something. And the bonuses um, probably are based on those. Indeed is also a very, very popular job board. It works out of the box with filters. You can filter for jobs in the past 24 hours, jobs in the past week, jobs by region, by title, you name it. It's really good for looking for jobs. So whereas LinkedIn, there's a lot of recruiters and hiring managers scouring those from an employer perspective, looking for the right candidates. Indeed is more about the candidate looking for jobs. So um, but obviously, for both parties are going to play in that arena. But I'm just saying the emphasis for LinkedIn is slightly different than for Indeed. Excuse me. For Glassdoor, it's interesting. Glassdoor also has, I mean, it's also a job board, but it's more than that. The features that it provides, it also almost becomes like sort of a career scanning um, platform or service for you, because you can look at salary bands. I mean, some of these stats that I was showing you, a lot of them come from Glassdoor. You go into Glassdoor and just look for types of salaries for a certain position, look for reviews about companies, things like that. I know there are other popular these days popular apps or web pages where you can anonymously get reviews and feedback from uh, people who are actively working at companies or have worked there. That works as well. But Glassdoor is also a place where you can find out more about companies and their work culture and things like that. For just finding out about like a company's history and more like their public financials, stocks and stuff. Crunchbase is also a pretty good one for that. So before you go to your interview, if you want to do just a quick research on a company, so you're knowledgeable about it and you sound smart during the interview, just go to Crunchbase and search that company up if it's available. In addition to searching up the company on their website and LinkedIn, Crunchbase is a good place to get some um, quick nuggets of information about a company before your job interview. So in terms of resume sequences and I'm talking about for a tech position, for non-tech, the personal portfolio webpage might not be as important, and especially the GitHub profile thing is probably not required for non-tech positions. But for the sequencing of building up a resume and its associated components to make yourself more visible to hiring managers and recruiters, what you want to do is start with building out the resume first. That's going to be your base template that you use for launching the other things like the personal web page and the GitHub profile, stuff like that. So you want to understand the anatomy of a resume. We'll go through that very quickly in a bit. I want to understand the different sections of the structure and how it's composable. So typically what you want to do is build a full CV, like basically everything you've ever done, worked at, education, certification. That becomes your template that you can pull pieces from to build an more tailored resumes from. So you have that huge, big template resume, and you pick pieces from it to tailor it and make it look like different profiles. So, DevOps engineering is such a huge umbrella. So maybe if you focus more on site reliability engineering jobs, then from your huge CV and resume, you pull the pieces that are more relevant for SRE jobs and positions. And then next time, if you're applying for, say, Kubernetes engineering positions, then you pull very specific pieces that build a resume that shows a profile for someone who's more focused on Kubernetes. But that's what I mean by resume composability. You just have a template and then start from there, you tailor it for different resume profiles. Okay. And like I said, for tech folks, you definitely probably want to consider building out a personal portfolio page. Get a website domain. It's so cheap these days. For example, on Cloudflare, you could get one for $7 a year. Obviously, depending on the domain name extension. Get yourself a GitHub repo if you're, especially if you're in tech and DevOps, doing coding and stuff, and deploy your uh, portfolio page so it's visible to the public and hiring managers and recruiters. Another very important part of this whole process is LinkedIn. Whether you like it or not, LinkedIn is a very important um, job platform for professionals. So you want to create your LinkedIn account. You want to understand the different LinkedIn components and then publish your LinkedIn page so recruiters and hiring managers have that visibility that you're available on the market and here's what you've done in the past. So in order to really start building out a resume for any job really, but for example, for a DevOps engineer position, what you want to do is understand, first of all, what is that job profile like? What are you going to be doing? And a quick way to do this is just look at a bunch of job ads for DevOps engineer, just see what the responsibilities are. And what I've done is I've summarized different sections of job ads that have these components commonly appear. So again, you can search this on LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor. For DevOps engineering positions, it kind of boils down to some key components here. So as a summary, a typical DevOps engineering position is going to say something like, implement DevOps practices in the organization. There's going to be keywords like automation, monitoring, software deployment, foster collaboration, efficiency between DevOps development and ops teams. Responsibilities might include build and maintain CI/CD pipelines, create and manage infrastructure as code, monitor and troubleshoot apps. If you keep reading job ads, you'll keep seeing these things appear over and over again. Skills might include knowledge of DevOps principles and practices, proficient in scripting and automation tools like Bash, PowerShell, Python, understanding cloud platforms. The tech stack that they're going to ask for will be stuff like this: AWS, Azure, GCP, those three big public cloud providers. That again, scripting. Then you have source code version control. You have containers. You have monitoring and logging. You have infrastructure automation and configuration, and then you have CI/CD. So those things keep appearing over and over again. And so once you understand what the hiring manager and the recruiters are looking for, then that's how you tailor your resume to match it. That's pretty straightforward. You're just reverse engineering based on what the job profile looks like. Because if your resume does not match any of the stuff they're looking for, you can't expect them to reach out to you for an interview. It doesn't make sense. But if you match what they're looking for, then you have a chance at least to be contacted and reached out for that. Okay. Now, in terms of the anatomy of the resume, pretty straightforward. This is going to be common, again, across the board. So you're going to have obviously the contact information part. You're going to have, your email, mobile phone, a key summary section. This is, again, these folks, they're probably going to be scanning once they have a few couple dozen or 100 resumes that they're interested in. They want to scan very quickly. I think on average it takes them 30 seconds to 60 seconds to scan a resume. So you want to hit them with like some key points right away that gives them the clue, I guess, that you're the right candidate for the job, so that you get shortlisted, right? So just hit them with in the summary, sort of what you can do, why they should continue to read the rest of your resume. So in a way, it's almost like the summary section is like a mini cover letter. Sometimes people do still want a cover letter anyway, so just expand, this in your cover letter. But this is kind of like a mini cover letter. That's one way to think of it. And the work experience, of course, is one of the most important parts of the resume. Show the impact that you've done at the places you've worked. Give them a reason why they have to consider you. So that's the way you want to think about it. Like basically, if they don't consider you, then they might miss out on their bonus or something like that. So the impact you've done on the places you've worked, try to be quantitative if you can. It's not always possible, but things like numbers, and then sort of verb items. These are things you typically hear when people talk about resumes and building, constructing effective resumes. And especially in tech, you want to mention maybe applications or projects you've worked on that summarize some of the skills that you mentioned. Like you don't want to mention all these skills and tech stacks, and then they look at through your work experience portfolio and they don't see any of the skills that you mentioned here. There's a misalignment there, right? So there has to be consistency. So if you say that Python, cloud, AWS, all that stuff, then at least some parts of the places you've worked should show those skills popping up and how you used it and the impact you had when you used it. Okay, so make sure it's consistent. Education. This is more of a formality. A lot of tech, especially the big tech firms, and have mentioned that they don't care if you have like a traditional college degree or whatever. Depends. Most folks, most places still kind of want to see that education thing as well. It's kind of a minimal standard. Helps for filtering depending, if all else equal. Also a good place, maybe as a separate section to start adding your certifications if you have it as well. Okay. For the personal portfolio page, like I mentioned, it's really the objective meant to showcase your professional work and projects. It's on the internet. People can use it. You can use it to drive traffic to your LinkedIn, GitHub pages, etc., and vice versa, actually. And you know what? If you're looking for a tech job, it also demonstrates your ability to leverage technology to do exactly that, job hunting. So it's a pretty good idea to have a personal portfolio page as well. Like I mentioned, good idea to have also a LinkedIn page. Just be a part of the global community of professionals. So a lot of folks in companies are going to have a LinkedIn page and profile. It's one of the major platforms that recruiters and hiring managers use to scout for talent. So you want to play in that arena, even if you're not actively searching right now. It's not a bad idea to put yourself out there. So if recruiters and hiring managers have an opportunity that it's probably going to be better for you for your career, for you to build your career on. At least they might contact you. This might not be the perfect time, but you make that connection with that recruiter, and in the future, when it makes more sense for you in terms of the timing, maybe you can make that step, that leap. And that could be a pivotal moment in your career as well, right? You just never know. So you don't want to miss out on opportunities. Make sure that you make yourself available and just see what opportunities are there. And sometimes it's a hit or miss, but sometimes it could be a pivotal moment in your career as well. You just never know. Sometimes it's used as a platform to be an influencer as well. A lot of people use it to share their knowledge, show that they're an expert in their field, use it for commentary and blogs. No, excuse me. Now I'm going to go through some what I call table stakes in your resume if you're going after DevOps engineering jobs. These usually make you stand out in a pool of candidates who are trying to apply for DevOps engineering positions. So just make sure you have at least these, or it's going to be very hard for them to consider you for later rounds. Communication and collaboration, like I mentioned, DevOps is not just about the tools. Anyone who knows DevOps and has worked in it understands that these DevOps engineers need to be able to communicate well both ways. You have to be able to ask the right questions to clarify what your stakeholders are asking for. And you have to be able to respond and answer to stakeholders to clarify anything they might be confused about when it comes to either your DevOps engineering or your pipeline or your teams and what you guys are trying to accomplish. You have to be able to work well on a team. I mean, that should be table stakes for any job, really, unless you're a solopreneur, and understand the principles of give and take. If you're always taking, it's going to be very hard for teams to want to continue collaborating or working with you. But if you're always giving at the same time, you can you can make it not good for yourself as well. So there has to be a balance of give and take. It's a major component in first round HR interviews. Anyone who's gone through a couple of job interviews will know that typically the first round is just behavioral interviews with the HR and HR trying to get to know you better. Can you communicate? Do you seem like a team player? That's sort of like a screening and filtering in the first round. Now, I mean, there's more soft skills than this, but I just wanted to mention that first. In terms of the tech and hard skills, Linux and Windows servers really, really important in DevOps engineering. Understanding the fundamental server administration, networking. Linux or Windows server experience will do, although there's more of an emphasis on Linux in the DevOps world. So if you have Linux, that's even better. You can log in, use, and configure servers as needed. Cloud, Kubernetes is cloud native, even though you can have obviously on-prem solutions like Red Hat OpenShift as well. But understanding cloud computing architecture and best practices, a good resource to really get the idea of how a well-architected cloud platform ecosystem should be done is reading AWS's well-architected framework articles. They published, I think, 6 of the major ones, which are the 6 pillars of the well-architected framework. Just read those. It gives you a really good handle on how cloud ecosystems are built from the ground up. You can design and deploy business application workloads in the cloud. Containers, one of the major pillars of DevOps. Docker containers, definitely a must. It still holds the lion's share of the container market. Podman, Build, and Scopio, which are more of the Red Hat flavor of containers, picking up a lot of popularity because of its emphasis on security. Docker containers usually run as root and require a daemon running in the back. Podman containers don't. Container images, running containers, troubleshooting containers. You gotta be familiar with all these things, and of course the beast, the heavy hitter Kubernetes here. Important to have that on your resume as well for containers. Not a you'd have to be like a depending on what kind of DevOps job you're going for. You don't have to be the expert in Kubernetes, but at least familiarize yourself with the fundamentals of Kubernetes in containers. Infrastructure automation, pretty important to understand the concepts of immutable infrastructure provisioning automation, things like Packer and Terraform, configuration management automation with things like Ansible. CI/CD, another huge important pillar in the DevOps world. Understand the application development build cycles, things like source code checkouts with GitHub, build, test, integrate, deploy, tools like Jenkins, GitHub Actions. Tecton, which is a cloud native CI/CD tool in Kubernetes, is gaining a lot of traction as well. It fits very nice within the Red Hat OpenShift ecosystem. So this is nice to at least familiarize yourself with, but also try to get some hands-on experience with Tecton as well. Let's go quickly through some samples. We're nearing the end of the PowerPoint deck here. So this is one of the candidates I helped mentor, and they got a DevOps engineer job recently, 3 months ago. So right away when you see this, looks like a pretty strong IT background. Looks like from this, like they've done a lot of IT support, help desk, application support type of thing. But they mentioned the table stakes, like I just talked to you about. Windows servers, Linux, the CI/CD here, containers, infrastructure automation. Mentioned certifications here, so I mean, quite a solid group of certifications here: ITIL, CompTIA, security. So just right off the bat, a very solid candidate for a DevOps engineering position. Okay, so in terms of their work experience, they did tech analyst, service desk, or your IT support types of things, VMware. Okay, support admin again, and then their education pretty impressive as well. Master of Engineering, Bachelor Technology. Excuse me. Excuse me. This is another candidate I helped I helped mentor. They got their DevOps engineering job offer about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Um, in terms of their uh, previous, I guess, work history, they were working on cloud, on-prem cloud, provided a lot of documentation support, application support for stakeholders. Here container technologies mentioned here. So servers, helping administer, maintain servers, virtualization, that IT stuff. Interestingly, they come from a biomedical science background. They do have, you'll see later, they have a PhD. Um, they have certifications here, Kubernetes certification, education again, PhD, biomedical science, tools, dimensioning, containers, cloud, OpenStack, Packer, Terraform, source code version control, Linux servers, cloud, there you go. Ansible, Jenkins. Again, a lot of the table stakes that I mentioned earlier, they have on the resume. So right away, anyone looking at this can be fairly confident that at least the table stakes are covered. Okay. But yeah, this one was a shorter resume. It was only a one pager actually. Okay, so we're nearing the end. So networking, like I mentioned, even though we spent all the time talking about the resume is sort of table stakes. You just need to have it. But I don't think that's the key differentiator here in terms of, if we talk about probabilities, what's going to increase your chances of getting a job? It's networking. It's who you know. And I've seen this myself, pretty much my career, where I kept getting um, job opportunities and things like that. It's actually through people I know, not necessarily that I had a great resume or anything. Um, in terms of the components of the networking, your the noun, you have to think of it in a few ways. The noun is your network. What is your network? The verb is you actually actively networking, right? So it's two sides of the coin here, more than just what your network is, but also you actively networking and building up your network. There's also organic versus intentional. So, how are your networks growing, or how are you building out your networks? Is it organic, or are you intentionally building a very specific type of network? And sources of networks. Where do your networks come from? Okay, so let's talk about a little bit of these components and break it out. So when I say organic, I mean from already existing groups you belong to. This could be family, friends, neighbors. It could be spontaneous conversations that happen, which lead to new contacts and opportunities. Intentional is when you know that you're either building out your career or you're actively job searching in the next 3 to 6 months or whatever. You know what industry and job roles you're targeting, and you specifically join relevant groups in those targeted areas. So you actively go to events, meetups to network with folks from that targeted job and industry. My recommendation is embrace both. This one, obviously, you're actively, you're putting the effort into it. But why not? Don't miss out on opportunities that could, come to fruition from organically. Sometimes you're talking to a friend or neighbor, and then they let you know their company's looking for so and so, or they know someone, or they have a friend who's looking for someone who seems like the profile looks you fit the bill, right? So those things happen organically and can sometimes be spontaneous. What are the sources of networking? I think obviously your just personal social circles, friends, family, things like that. It could be from the local clubs, depending on what your extracurricular activities and interests are. You might play piano or something. Meetup groups, either virtual online, or you might go to meetup groups locally, physically in person. Could be through sports. You might play hockey, soccer, basketball at a local sport, and you could have conversations there, which lead to opportunities. Professional colleagues, of course, at work or even through your clients or whatever. Sometimes they mention opportunities, and like I mentioned, spontaneous, organic. Sometimes you're just at the mall, you're just at a park. at a recreation center having conversation, and then all of a sudden one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you're at an interview, maybe for a DevOps engineering position in a week or so. And the last thing I want to cover before we wrap all these things up is leverage. Leverage is actually very important. Leverage can be the difference between, a 10 grand salary uh, negotiation. It could be the difference between more benefits, less benefits. Could be the difference between bonuses. Could be the difference between you getting equity, maybe in a startup or something. So leverage comes from both sides, both parties. Okay. A hiring manager recruiter could, maybe their job posting is so popular that they have so many, and usually this is the case. They have so many candidates to choose from. So they can sort of be more firm in terms of what their offers are and what they want. But it could be that some jobs are really just very hard to fill, and then there are only some select talents who are able to do those types of either very technical skills or be able to do those things to fill those roles and positions. Then now the leverage, the balance is on the side of the candidate, and they have more leverage, and they can negotiate salary increases, better benefits, more bonus, possibly equity in the company. So you just have to balance that and understand where you can get leverage and when you have leverage. So if you're applying to multiple places and you have offers coming in from multiple places, then you can use one offer to as leverage for negotiating up your salary for another job offering company that you're actively looking at as well. Okay, so leverage covers for both sides, and it's very important when it comes to negotiation and getting better things. So that really wraps up the session today, and just all the items I wanted to get out there. I think really for you folks who either are actively seeking or will soon start seeking for jobs and thinking about the resume and thinking about interviews and things like that. Keep thinking about it as a journey. I think you really have to think about it as a journey. Think of it holistically. Your jobs are just possibly one stop in the many, many stops that you'll continue to have in your life. And a job is a job. A career is a career. You have your own personal life that you have to balance as well. But typically, like, let's assume a 9 to 5 job. That's 8 hours of your day. It's very important to take these things into consideration before you just blindly sign a job offer, whatever. And again, it goes back to leverage. You want to be in a position where you think about what the job is offering you, what you'll be doing 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, for 4 weeks a month, for 12 months a year, for how many years. It's a huge part of your life. So you want to think carefully about it. You want to always be in a position of leverage so you can think about what's best for your family, what's best for you, what's best for your work-life balance. And yeah, and I hope I wish you all the best. Whoever's looking and whoever's thinking about jobs and resumes and stuff, it can be a tough time right now, especially again with the whole Silicon Valley thing. I think we're all still reeling from it a little bit and trying to figure how all this is going to work out. But yeah, so best of luck to everyone. We are quite a bit over. I got to get going, but this will be available. The recording will be available, and I'll just answer very quickly. Gene, are you a part-time mentor? What is your No, so I am fully mentoring the folks who are in the WeCloud data program. So if you are part of the program, it's my sort of part of my responsibilities to mentor you throughout the program, and also once you start looking uh, for a job. In terms of seniority, I'm an architect at my company, but depending on which, the size of your company and the industry, it can be different types of seniorities you'll be getting. So, for example, I spoke to a friend of mine who is working for a Fortune 10 or Fortune 15 company. They bring in like $200 billion of revenue um, a year. Uh, his his title is senior infrastructure engineer, but he has 20 years of experience. At my company right now, I'm kind of considered an architect, but I have nowhere near the amount of experience that he has. But his company's huge, right? So he's considered a senior there, but he, if he was if he was working in my company, he would be even higher than way higher than architect or whatever um, position this is. Would be interested to have an overview of tech industry that operates in that field internal. Yeah, for sure. So Gene, why don't you reach out to me? We can have these conversations offline, or you can come to our other info sessions in the future. I'll leave my uh, email right here, and you can also join our Discord channel. We can show you. We can talk to you about these other things as well. But all right, folks, I got to get going. Hopefully, everyone learned something. Hopefully, you can take something away from this. But if you have any other questions, feel free to join the Discord server or channel. Reach out to myself. The email I just put in the chat. Go to our website if you want to find out more information about our programs. But yeah, so hope everyone has a great rest of the evening, and looking forward to seeing you folks in our future info sessions as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.